We used the money from your mother-in-law's savings for this trip. It'll eventually become Tyler's inheritance anyway, so it's fine, right? My brother and his wife rushed over immediately after my mother passed away, not to offer condolences, but to get her bank book and withdraw her savings before I could even submit her death certificate to the government office. You used Mom's money, huh? I asked, trying to suppress my anger. Carol casually responded, Yeah, we spent about $10,000 on the trip. LOL. The audacity of my brother and his wife, who conspired to use my mother's money without permission, made me furious for a moment. But then I remembered something. Right? These people don't know. I couldn't help but laugh. My condolences, I said, grinning. Carol looked puzzled. What's wrong with you? Did the shock of us using the money make you go crazy? Of course, I wasn't going crazy. I was just picturing the look on their faces when they learned the truth. Their carefree days were numbered. I am Samantha, an ordinary office worker raised by kind and generous parents. My parents always put others first, even when it meant being burdened with unfair responsibilities. Despite being taken advantage of at times, they remained steadfast in their kindness. But my brother, Tyler, was different. Tyler was always calculating, always looking for what would benefit him the most. To him, our parents' generosity was foolish. As a teenager, he constantly demanded more money, arguing, "If you can afford to help strangers, you can give me more allowance." Our parents never changed their ways, no matter how much he rebelled. This only fueled his resentment. In college, Tyler took full advantage of them. Since they paid his tuition, he spent his days partying, only to fail a year. Parents should naturally devote themselves to their children, he justified. Or can you only be kind to strangers, but not your own family? After college, Tyler moved out but frequently returned, only to ask for money. I can't live on my first paycheck, he'd whine. And my parents, ever generous, kept giving. When I got a job, I decided to support them financially instead of Tyler. Samantha, it's your hard-earned money. You don't have to do this, my parents would say. But I wanted to. Unlike my brother, I believed in repaying kindness with kindness. Years passed, and Tyler continued to leech off our parents. But one day, he did something unusual. He invited us to a restaurant. Sitting beside him was a beautiful woman. Dad, Mom, Samantha, this is Carol, he said proudly. I've decided to marry her. We'll be busy preparing for the wedding and buying a house, but I hope you'll support us. I thought he meant emotional support. But, of course, Tyler had something else in mind. He persuaded our parents to pay for the wedding and their new home, knowing they'd never say no. And even after the wedding, he continued taking money from them. Carol, now used to this luxury, became even more extravagant. But this lifestyle wouldn't last forever. Our father's health took a turn for the worse, and he was hospitalized. Even with insurance, the costs were overwhelming. Tyler, we've both benefited from Mom and Dad's generosity, I said. Let's split the hospital bills. But my brother scoffed. Why should I? It's Dad's fault for not taking care of his health. If he spent less time helping others and more time on himself, maybe he wouldn't be in this mess. He never visited our father, not even once. My mother and I cared for Dad, but despite our efforts, he passed away. Even in death, Tyler remained indifferent. He barely attended the funeral, didn't greet the relatives, and left as soon as he could. Mom, who had always been so strong, was devastated. She lost not just her husband, but the will to go on. Tyler, Mom is feeling down, I pleaded. Can you visit her? Tyler paused, then asked, What happened to Dad's inheritance? It all went to Mom, I replied. His eyes gleamed with greed. So she has all the money now. A bad feeling crept over me. Tyler, I warned, Mom is emotionally fragile right now. Don't even think about taking her money. His response? A smirk. If I can't get any money, what's the point of visiting? And with that, he never came. Half a year later, Mom passed away. Even knowing her fragile state, Tyler never called, never checked in. But when he heard of her death, he rushed back home, not out of grief, but to claim her assets. I assumed that, as the eldest son, He would take responsibility for the funeral. But the moment the ceremony started, he and Carol vanished. I called him, but his phone went straight to voicemail. In the end, I stepped up as chief mourner, taking on a role that should have been his. It wasn't until days later that I finally reached him. "Samantha," Carol answered. "Tyler is busy with boarding procedures and can't talk." "Boarding procedures? Where are you?" She laughed. "We're at JFK Airport. We're leaving the United States in a few hours." LOL. My stomach dropped. "You're leaving the country?" "Yep," she chirped. "Oh, and thanks for the 10 grand. The trip was amazing." I clenched my fists. That money wasn't theirs to take. But little did they know, they were in for the shock of their lives. Because I had one final surprise waiting for them. Yes, we're going on an international trip. I was stunned. My brother and his wife had decided to travel abroad immediately after our mother's passing. But what Carol said next left me speechless. "We're really grateful to our mother-in-law, you know. Thanks to her, we're able to enjoy this luxurious trip abroad." Ha! A chill ran down my spine.
"What do you mean by that?"
I asked, my voice calm but firm. "Well, we used our mother-in-law's savings for this trip," Carol said nonchalantly. "It was going to be Tyler's inheritance anyway, so why not use it now?" I clenched my fists. "How did you get that money?" "When we visited her house, we borrowed her bank book and seal," she admitted shamelessly. "We knew we wouldn't be able to withdraw money once the death certificate was submitted, so we hurried." So that was the real reason they rushed to our mother's house after her death. Not to grieve, not to help with the funeral, but to steal from her before the bank froze the account. "You used Mom's money?" I asked, struggling to contain my anger. Carol chuckled. "Yes, we already spent about $10,000 on the trip. It's a good thing Tyler's plan worked out." For a moment, fury burned inside me. Their audacity was beyond anything I could have imagined. But then, something clicked in my mind. That's right. They don't know. A slow smile spread across my face. And then, I laughed. "Serves you right." Carol's cheerful tone wavered. "What's wrong with you? Did the shock of us using the money make you lose your mind?" Tyler was the eldest son, so naturally, he thought he was entitled to everything. Still chuckling, I said, "Sure, that's fine. I'll give up my inheritance so Tyler can inherit everything. That was your plan all along, right?" Carol gasped, then burst out laughing. "Oh my, you're quite understanding. By the way, please make sure to arrange for all of Mama's mail to be sent to your house from now on. Don't worry, it's a simple task. I'll let Tyler know." With that, she hung up, sounding delighted. They had no idea what was coming. I didn't hear from Tyler again until they returned from their trip. "Samantha," he said smugly, "Carol told me you're giving up your inheritance." "Yes," I replied. "But more importantly, did you handle the mail forwarding for Mom's letters?" "Yeah, I took care of it as soon as we got back." "Good to know you're not going to change your mind later, right? You won't suddenly say, 'I should have inherited after all'?" "Of course not," I said, barely hiding my amusement. "Well, it's only right that I, the eldest son, inherit everything." Ha! Tyler ended the call in high spirits. For a while, everything was quiet. Then, a few weeks later, Tyler called again. But this time, his voice was filled with panic. "Samantha, there's a collection notice addressed to Mom in her mail." "What's this about?" "Oh, is it from the bank?" I asked, feigning innocence. Our parents had always believed in helping others. If someone needed financial support, they never hesitated to lend money, even if it meant borrowing from the bank themselves or becoming a guarantor for others. Over time, their debt had snowballed into something enormous. The amount of debt was far greater than their savings. By inheriting everything, Tyler hadn't gained a fortune. He had inherited a mountain of debt. "Did you know about this?" my brother yelled. I let out a slow sigh. "Tyler, you took Mom's money and used it for a vacation before the inheritance process was completed, right?" "So what? What does that have to do with anything?" "It's a big deal," I said, my tone serious. "Legally, by withdrawing money from a deceased family member's account for your own use, You've engaged in what's called simple acceptance of the inheritance. Simple what? Explain it so I can understand. I smirked. It means that by touching Mom's money, you've automatically accepted everything in her estate. Not just the savings, but also the debt. You can't reject the inheritance now, Tyler. Silence. Then, a strangled gasp. You're making this up. You just want to take the inheritance for yourself. If you don't believe me, ask your lawyer, I said coolly. Tyler hung up. It wasn't long before he called me again. His voice was hollow. Samantha, you were right. I can't give up the inheritance now. The lawyer confirmed it. My brother, who had always bragged about outsmarting our parents, had trapped himself. For years, he had taken money from them without a second thought, never realizing they had been struggling under the weight of debt. Now, that debt was his burden to bear. But, of course, Tyler being Tyler, he had one last desperate scheme. Hey, Samantha, he said, suddenly sounding friendly. Our parents are gone now, and it's just as siblings, right? We should join forces. Join forces. I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, we should work together to pay back their debt. Now's the time to show our filial piety. So forget about the inheritance and help me pay half. I nearly laughed. When Dad was in the hospital, I said slowly, I asked you to help. You refused. You said it was his own fault for not taking care of his health. That was different. I was busy back then. No matter how busy you were, you never visited Dad. And when Mom needed you, you ignored her. I took a deep breath. I don't want to hear the words filial piety from you. Ever again. Tyler was speechless. You took advantage of our kind parents for years, I continued.
But now?
There's no one left for you to exploit. Samantha, please. If you don't help me, Carol and I won't be able to pay the debt. Are you really going to abandon your own brother? I smirked. When Dad was in the hospital, you abandoned him. You said it was his own fault. Well, Tyler, this time, using Mom's money was your fault. I regret it, okay? I've changed, I scoffed. Have you? I don't think so. And even if you have, the people you should be apologizing to are no longer here. I hung up. That was the last real conversation we ever had. Tyler and Carol's marriage, built on greed and luxury, quickly fell apart under the weight of debt. They fought constantly. Divorce was out of the question. They couldn't afford separate living expenses. At first, they tried to cut back on spending, making minimum payments toward the debt. But it didn't last. Tyler, who had once lived freely at our parents' expense, was now drowning in the consequences of his own actions. As for me, I moved on. With no debt, no regrets, and no burden of family toxicity, I lived a peaceful life. After all, kindness should never be taken for granted. And greed always has a price. Neither Tyler nor Carol could let go of their luxurious lifestyle. Even as the weight of their debt crushed them, they secretly spent money behind each other's backs, unable to break their reckless habits. Their financial situation never improved. Every step forward was undone by another selfish decision. As the debt refused to shrink, their resentment toward each other grew. Blame became their only language, each accusing the other of their misfortune. Their marriage, already built on greed and self-indulgence, continued to rot in an endless cycle of mistrust and arguments. Meanwhile, I finally found the time to properly mourn our parents. During their funeral, I had seen firsthand how many lives they had touched. Countless attendees, some of whom I had never even met before, wept as they shared stories of how my parents had helped them in their darkest times. They had lent money, offered shelter, and given kindness freely, never once expecting anything in return. For the first time in a long while, I felt proud. It was ironic, really. Tyler, the son who had never shown gratitude, who had always taken without a second thought, was now burdened by the very debts created by our parents' generosity. And yet, despite everything, I didn't resent my parents for the choices they made. Their kindness was a reflection of who they were, people who believed in helping others, even at great personal cost. With these thoughts in mind, I continued to pay my respects at the family altar every day. Because while greed had consumed my brother's life, my parents' legacy was one of kindness. And that was something worth remembering. Please feel free to comment below if you like this. Remember to like and subscribe for more.